This problem is asking us to determine the headwind component for a crosswind that's given for runway 18. But we will also determine the headwind and crosswind component for this problem. So for these types of problems, the first thing that I like to do is I like to draw the runway and crosswind information so that I can get a pretty good idea of what it's going to be before I actually work the problem. So here we can see that we have runway 18. We're landing to the south, and winds are out of 220. So if here's 18, here's about 19, 200, 210, 220. Just ballparking. So winds are going to be at about out of this angle to the runway. And we can go ahead and say winds 220 minus 180 is about a 40-degree crosswind. So we've got about 40 degrees here. So what we can see is that with the wind coming out of this direction, if we are landing on runway 18, well, we can easily see that we're going to have a headwind. And the crosswind as we're landing. Here's our airplane. Tail. Propeller. The crosswind is going to be coming from the right side of the aircraft. So I like to draw these out first because it gives me more of a confirmation of what the E6B may be telling us also. So the first thing I'm going to come back to the chart. I'll show you how to use the chart once, and then we'll use the E6B for this type of a problem. So what is the headwind component for landing runway 18 if the tower reports wind 220 at 30 knots? So the first thing when using the graphic crosswind component is we have to determine the difference between our runway heading and the crosswind, which we've already done that. We've determined that it's 40 degrees. So we are going to be somewhere on this 40-degree line to get our answer. Then we're going to look at the strength of the wind, and that's 30 knots. So here's 10 knots, 20 knots, 30 knots intercepts our 40-degree line about right here. So then we're going to draw lines horizontal and vertical to get the crosswind and horizontal component information. So our headwind component is going to be about 23 or 24. We'll say 23. And our crosswind component is going to be about 19. So now we're going to use the E6B and kind of get more accurate information. So going over to the E6B, we're going to click on wind, then down to crosswind, and the wind direction is 220 at 30 knots, and the runway is runway 18. Now most of the time when you enter heading information into the E6B, you run it in the 3 digits, 180. But when we're talking about runway information, we only use 2 digits because only 2 digits are used on airport runways. So we're going to enter in 18. And that's going to give us a crosswind component of 19 and a headwind component of 23. Then what you'll see is one has a plus or one is a positive number, one is a negative number. When the headwind is a negative number, that means it's a headwind. If this 23 was a positive, that would be a tailwind. For the crosswind information, if there is a negative, that means it's a left crosswind. But if it's a positive number, that means it's a right crosswind. And going back to our graph, we can confirm that the wind's blowing from the right of the aircraft, and so the crosswind component will be from the right at 19.3 knots, and headwind component 23 knots.